Thank you so much, Chief Isabel, for that very comprehensive information regarding the end of school year reading program. At this point, to discuss the National Reading Program vis-a-vis the reading program of the Learning Camp, let us have Ms. Ayat Farios, the Supervising Education Program Specialist from the Bureau of Curriculum Development.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your active participation in this very important initiative to help improve the literacy skills of our learners, the Learning Camp Reading Program. Relative to the Learning Camp is the National Reading Program. I'm sure you have a lot of questions regarding this big nationwide project, and so I hope that they will be answered in this short presentation. The DepEd recognizes the importance of literacy development among learners as it plays a crucial role in knowledge formation and academic achievement. This is the reason behind the many reading programs and literacy interventions in place across the country. However, Filipino learners continue to exhibit unsatisfactory reading proficiency as evidenced by the NAT, or the National Achievement Test, and International Large-Scale Assessments, or ILSAs, prompting the need for a national reading program. Now, there is no shortage in reading programs in the Department of Education. As you can see, there are so many programs right here. We have the 3Ps initiative, Hamon Bawat Bata Bumabasa, Sinergia Reading Proficiency Program, Saklat Sisikat Reading Program, Basa Pilipinas, Brigada Pagbasa Program, and many other locally initiated programs. But these didn't seem to work because of the following reasons. First is unclear benchmarks that would measure and monitor the reading performance of the learners year on year. PhilErie has been found to be tedious work, and reports have not been fully analyzed in order to provide intervention. Region and division-wide interventions with external partners are limited. No national benchmarks for progress and targets, and no national reading program that defines clear expectations, monitoring and evaluation, and tracking of progress. And so what needs to be done? The NRP, or the National Reading Program, is not a new reading program, but rather an attempt to streamline all reading promotion initiatives in the country. It aims to incorporate best practices across the nation and address problems that prevail in existing reading programs. The NRP aims to help Filipino learners attain reading proficiency according to their level and improved learning outcomes as evidenced by both national and international large-scale assessment results. In order to effectively meet the objectives of the program, the department put together a technical working group composed of personnel from different levels of governance, each performing a distinct task relevant to their respective mandates. And you can see the members of the TWG flashed on your screen. So, what have we done with the TWG so far? In less than 8 weeks, the National Reading Program Technical Working Group and the BCT Secretariat have conducted meetings and consultations, gathered data which have been evaluated and analyzed, and finally drafted the implementing guidelines of the program. The activities conducted are enumerated in this. The BCD Secretariat, along with the original crafters of the language curricula, also developed a syllabus for the supplemental reading program. This syllabus, which identifies target learning competencies along the 8-week reading schedule, served as another layer of evaluation. On February 6 to 10, private publishers were requested to submit remedial packages for the NRP via the National Book Development Board, or NBDB. The following month, on March 6 to 10, and just recently, On May 10 to 12, the same group evaluated learning resources developed by USAID in 2 separate sessions. The draft policy document was validated in May in Davao City, where the TWG visited schools in 2 different divisions in the region to help improve the implementing guidelines. Of particular focus during this activity was the roles and responsibilities section. Finally, just last week, the policy document was finalized and is now being polished to reflect changes in the curriculum. Pero ano nga bang nilalaman ng ating polisiya? So here's a little bit of an overview. Part of the policy is the conceptual framework of the NRP, which reflects the ultimate goal of the program, and that is to ensure that every Filipino learner is a reader. This is achieved through a sound theory-based curriculum supported by effectively crafted resources and delivered using teaching and learning methodologies that support literacy development for reading. Learners' reading capacity is then assessed to inform the need for curriculum and delivery enhancement. The framework, as you can see, recognizes the role of teachers and instructional leaders in guaranteeing that this cycle is effectively carried out. Finally, monitoring, evaluation, and research is done continuously to improve the program with the help of a variety of support mechanisms. Now, how exactly will the NRP be delivered? Now, you will find that the NRP has a lot of similarities with the Learning Camp reading program. Right here, you will see that the NRP is 2-pronged in its approach. It is a built-in developmental reading program, or the core reading program, which is implemented through the language curricula for English, Filipino, and mother tongue. You will find in the policy document a comprehensive discussion of the enhanced language curriculum reflecting the proposed changes in the language policy. It talks about how the revised language arts continuum, which shows how Filipino, English, and mother tongue are developed simultaneously, and how each key stage focuses on different and progressing forms of literacy, from oracy to literacy to multi-literacies. There is also a discussion on the Big Six of reading, adopted from the 3 Bs, or the Hamon Bawat Bata Bumabasa program. Through the curriculum guide and the shaping paper, teachers and other stakeholders will be educated on how to offer this aspect of the NRP. Kaya wag po kayong mag-alala. The core reading program of the NRP is embedded in the language curricula. So you will find that the NRP is also going to be delivered through the delivery of our curriculum guides. And right here, we see the reorganization of the continuum for the language arts, in that all language learning areas, including Filipino and English, shall be introduced at the onset of grade 1, developing the oracy of learners first, which shall then serve as the foundation for literacy development in these languages. Filipino and English shall be offered simultaneously starting in grade 1 and shall primarily develop learners' literacy. The curricula for both languages shall be MT-based, as oracy and literacy skills in the first language serve as the foundation in transitioning learners' literacy to Filipino and English. Oracy for literacy is the ability to use relevant oral language elements like phonological awareness, vocabulary, and listening capacity to develop basic or beginning literacy. Basic literacy, or the skills used for the initial learning of reading and writing, shall be developed in both languages from the 3rd to the 4th quarters of grade 1, from grades 2 to 3, critical literacy, which refers to the central thinking skill that involves the questioning and examination of ideas, and the skills to synthesize, analyze, interpret, evaluate, and respond to text, shall be developed. Filipino and English shall continue developing and enhancing learners' applied literacy skills from grades 4 to 6. Applied literacy is the ability to evaluate the veracity of information and make connections and judgments of the relevance of information. It is a useful tool in understanding literature, culture, and other disciplines. Finally, by the 3rd key stage, both learning areas shall contribute to the development of learners' multi-literacies, or the ability to understand information and the design of meaning through the manipulation of individual modes: linguistic meaning, visual meaning, audio meaning, gestural, tactile, and spatial. Now, the second prong is new. Okay, I understand that the curriculum is also new, but the second prong is something that is going to be introduced for the first time in the Department of Education, at least at this big a scale. It is an add-on remedial and enrichment reading program, which is going to be using the additional 150 minutes per week made possible by the revision of the curriculum. In the process of revising the curriculum, we have congested the curriculum guides and therefore made way for the National Literacies Program, including the NRP. Depending on the learner's profile established through an interim assessment, a learner is admitted to either remediation or enrichment. On this slide, you will see a flowchart that describes the process of the add-on reading program. So let's imagine that we have two kinds of learners. One who is able to go through the regular curriculum, the regular program with relative ease, and another who struggles. For the former, who does not need any form of intervention or help in coping with the regular program, he or she is subjected to an enrichment program. For the latter, who needs additional instruction in reading, he or she is admitted to the remediation program. Now, let's take a look at the flowchart more closely. We begin with a pre-assessment in the form of the CARLA. Okay, so I'm sure that you're all familiar with the Comprehensive Rapid Literacy Assessment that we developed alongside USAID. Okay, now the CARLA will determine whether the learner meets a specific set of reading standards. These standards will, of course, be determined by us with the help of our literacy experts and based on the language curriculum. If no, the learner does not meet the said standards, he or she goes through the remediation. Now, we understand that remediation is not a homogeneous session. There are varying levels. Suppose there are 3, as can be seen here. Depending on the results of the assessment, a learner shall undergo the level of remediation necessary. After continuous reading exercises or activities, the learner is given a post-test, which determines if he or she meets a certain set of standards. If assessment determines that the learner needs more remediation, that learner will again be put in the level appropriate to him or her. If, on the other hand, the learner meets the standards that qualifies him or her to be admitted to enrichment, then the learner goes through continuous pleasure reading activities on top of the regular reading program embedded in our curriculum. Now, we also understand that sometimes learners regress, and when this happens in enrichment, the learner will be given intervention until he or she is ready to go back to enrichment. At the end of the whole process, the goal is clear, and that is to help learners attain the grade level reading standards according to our curriculum. The whole process is discussed in the newest version of the policy, where you will also find the following sections: the rationale, the policy statement, scope, goals and objectives, definition of terms, the conceptual framework, implementation procedures, program management, and monitoring and evaluation. So I hope that this presentation has been helpful to all of you. Good luck with the rest of the workshop. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ms. Ayet, for sharing the overview of the National Reading Program and what we will conduct the end of school year reading program as the jumpstart of the NRP. Okay. To give the delivery models of the end of the school year program, we have another resource person. Teacher Daisy Calado graduated from the University of the Philippines with a bachelor's degree in education in reading. She received her master's degree in reading from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. For more than 17 years, she has been educating students with reading difficulties as a reading specialist. She taught as a classroom teacher at the UP Integrated School from 2005 to 2010. She is currently the Center Director of Read Plus, a reading intervention center in Green Hills. She has been very active in giving teacher training as one of the founding members of CORIS, or Council of Reading Intervention Specialists. She recently provided training on leveling reading materials for K-3 in the first ever book festival and served as a consultant in the development of the K-3 nationwide learning camp curriculum for the Department of Education. And now she's also one of the current consultants of ABC Plus. Once again, let us give a virtual round of applause to Ms. Daisy Jane Cunanan Calado, our teacher, Daisy.
Bye. Thank you, Ms. Mona. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so let me share my screen. Right. So it was let me start it by doing like by connecting together the talk of Dr. Lay up until the message of Ma'am Isabel and Ma'am Ayet, no. The domains of literacy had to be reviewed because they play a crucial role in this learning camp. The domains, particularly those that are going to be tackled in the learning camp, which include alphabet knowledge, phonological awareness, word reading and spelling, okay, because that would be included. And from word reading to phrase reading for the mild refresher. Okay. So these domains, which came out as the problem areas for particularly those who are not able to read after a school year, right, would be addressed in the learning camp. And these domains are the starting domains required for the more complex ones. Okay, that is not to say that we will not give attention to the bigger domains like vocabulary, comprehension, both listening and reading, but we need the building blocks. These are prerequisite skills that kids need for them to become skilled readers. So that is the reason why from the result of the CRLA of the students, we are able to come up with which domains would we be addressing for this particular learning camp. So that is what I will discuss to you in detail. Okay, now this is going to be like the primer because the National Reading Recovery is going to be continuous for the whole school year. So the preparation or this learning camp was born because of the need to give these students a head start or somewhat to bridge the gap that they had so that they would be ready to face the challenges, the literacy challenges that they will have for the coming school year. So kumbaga hindi siya pwedeng ipagwalang bahala kasi based on the results of the assessments ay nag-fall into the cracks, no? Meaning kapag hindi natin in-address to with this gap, with this time gap, then they would continue to fall into these cracks or even worse for the coming school year. Kaya ginagawa natin ng paraan. I know this might sound too tedious for the teachers or for the kids, but then if we will, like I said, if we will not take this opportunity where the students would not have anything to think about because they are not going to think about the other content areas, but focus on enhancing the skills that they actually need for them to be prepared for the coming school year. So it's a sacrifice for all of us, but then we have to look into the bigger picture, which is it can be a very good tool, not only for the kids to be equipped with their literacy challenges, but also it will make the lives of the teachers easier if there would be very few full refreshers in the class, right? Alam natin yan, if you are handling a lot of kids and if a huge chunk of your students in your class are non-readers, right? Then the more that it's very taxing for the teacher to address those needs because you definitely have to do differentiated instruction on a daily basis, right? Because half of your class are probably not understanding what you are talking about. So that is the rationale. That is the point behind the models. Okay. So just a recap. This is the lesson map 1 for the emerging. So we categorized it into 3 lesson maps. The first one is the emerging group, meaning the students who would be under this level include level 1, grade 1 rather, full refresher and moderate refresher, level 2 or grade 2 full refreshers and grade 3 full refresher. What does that mean? So all the students in this grade level that fall under these categories based on the results of the CRLA would have the same program. Okay, why is that so? Grade 2 na or grade 3 na, pero bakit sila undergo ng same content that the grade 1 full refresher and moderate refreshers would have. This is because when they are categorized under the full refresher, that means that the skills that they have in terms of literacy are similar to the skills of the grade 1 full refresher and moderate refresher. So it is just but logical for them to also undergo the same steps so that they can move on to the next level. Okay, the identified target domains for lesson map 1 or the emerging group are phonological awareness and alphabet knowledge. The beauty of the CRLA results is that it allowed us to see that these tiny blocks, what they appear to be tinier blocks compared to the other domains that you can see at the rightmost column, right? Because they normally are presented in the early grades. However, the phonological awareness and alphabet knowledge, as you know, if they are not addressed or if they are not mastered, can greatly impact the way a child would read. As mentioned by Dr. Lei a while ago, reading is not just decoding, right? If the child can sound out or make sense of the symbols on print, that doesn't mean that the child can read. For the child to be labeled as a skilled reader, the child has to understand what he or she is reading, can talk about it, can write about it. So being a skilled reader per se is a very complex description, right? You don't just you're not just called a reader if you can decode. So I think that is one of the misconceptions that sometimes you would hear from parents or from people, right? That, oh, this child can read, but he cannot understand. So that child cannot read. That child can decode, but that child definitely it has a long way to go before he or she would be able to read. Okay, now the other domains that may be addressed, that can actually be addressed in the implementation of the models, would include oral language, vocabulary, writing and composing, and listening comprehension. The whole lesson is 90 minutes. So 30 minutes of the lesson would actually be allocated for the presentation of the topics for the target domains and the integration of the other domains during the circle time. So later, I will give you a visual representation of what I'm talking about so that you can really see how that is happening or how that will happen in your actual implementation. So for the emerging group, you have 15 sessions. They would meet for 5 weeks, 3 times a week for 90 minutes, okay? And the medium of instruction is mother tongue. Okay. For the second group, all right, which is the developing, this is lesson map 2. This will also have 15 sessions, 5 weeks of 3 times per week, 90 minutes. The students who would be under this group would be the grade 1 light refresher, the grade 2 moderate refresher, and the grade 3 moderate refresher. Again, they would undergo the same content because having been under this group is telling us that their scores, right, or their abilities are falling into this category. Okay. Notice that the target domains for this group would be alphabet knowledge still, but then the phonics instruction is aiming to reach the word reading level. So this does not mean that phonological awareness instruction would not be integrated, but of course, in the activities, that would incidentally be tapped also. So for example, if the presentation lesson or if the presentation material is a song or a rhyme, then or a poem, then definitely phonological awareness is integrated in the activity. Okay. Similar to the first one, there are also other domains that we wish to address in the developing lesson map. So that is vocabulary, oral language, writing and composing, and listening comprehension. Okay, why is it done this way? if you're going to look into the reading rope of Scarborough, the ones at the bottom, so there is no degree of which one is important. The reading rope just tells you that the domains at the bottom, which include alphabet knowledge, phonological awareness, sight word reading, and spelling, are the skills, the literacy skills that a child needs to become automatic. So for us to have a skilled reader, there has to be automaticity. Kasi nabanggit nga ni Teacher Lay kanina, 'di ba? Kung nauubos yung bata, yung oras ng bata sa pag may make sense nung print or pagde-decode nung print, hindi na yan aabot sa comprehension. Kasi naubos na doon sa halted reading niya yung kanyang energy at yung kanyang skills, 'di ba? So, kapag na-address natin yung nasa ibabang domains na to, na smaller units but also equally important units, at in-integrate natin yung nasa ibabaw na domains, which is language structure, vocabulary, background knowledge, then the child will become so at the bottom is automaticity, and then at the top is strategic. Okay? Ibig sabihin, kapag meron siyang na-encounter na difficulty while reading or comprehending, the child is able to apply self-help skills. So yun naman yung natatarget nitong mga domains na to. So we carefully designed the learning camp curriculum in such a way that we are both addressing the target domains, given more highlight in terms of the minutes, but not compromising the other domains which are also necessary for the child to become strategic. Hindi kasi pwedeng automatic ka lang nagbabasa pero wala ka namang strategies, right? That you don't know how to make sense of what you are decoding or giving meaning to what you are decoding. So yun yung beauty ng ginawang design. All right. For the third group or the transitioning group, transitioning na sila kasi light refreshers na to. Sino ba ang nandito? Grade 2, light refresher, and grade 3, light refresher. Ibig sabihin, konting-konti na lang yung gaps na nakita sa kanila for them to be grade level ready. So just the same, they would be given 90 minutes, 45 minutes for mother tongue and 45 minutes for Filipino. So kung yung lesson map 1 and 2 members would have mother tongue as their medium of instruction, then this group would have both the mother tongue and Filipino. They would have a shorter number of weeks, 9 sessions, 3 weeks, 3 times a week. Okay? And the target domains would include word reading and phrase reading. So kung kanina meron tayong alphabet knowledge to word reading, ito naman ay nag-progress na from word reading to phrase reading. And who knows, we can also do sentence reading, diba? We cannot limit the possibilities of what we can target. If they are very receptive to the instruction that we're going to give, we definitely can be ambitious and think of doing sentence reading. Kasi may teacher discretion naman, no? Kung nakikita mo na ang bilis ng mag-phrase reading, say by session 5, there's no point of limiting it to phrase reading if you can move on to sentences. All right. Other domains to be targeted would include vocab, oral language, writing, and composing. As you can see, may pagsulat na dito kasi light refreshers naman na to, and listening comprehension. Ayan. Okay, so yun yung ating categories, no, based on the kids who would undergo the program. This time, papakita ko naman sa inyo yung paano siya mangyayari in the classroom. So meron tayong mga ginawang organizational models, meaning ito yung actual classroom look. So pwedeng meron tayong grade 1 na merong 3 classes. Yung premise or yung rationale bakit merong groupings, ito po ay lumabas because during the 1-week training for this, nakita natin na iba-iba yung profiles ng mga school. Meaning, merong malaki yung sections, merong isa lang yung teacher, isa lang yung grade level, per municipality. So, nagbigay tayo ng provision for those differences in the school profile. So, hindi lang natin i-address yung ating student profile, pero bibigyan din natin ng pansin yung pagkakaiba-iba ng papaano ang nangyayari sa bawat school based on their setup in different regions. Okay. So ito yung may provision na yung grade 1 teacher, pwede siyang magkaroon ng, yung grade 1 level, pwede siyang magkaroon ng 3 classes. Okay? Doon sa 3 klase na yon, si teacher A would have all the 3 groups. Again, let me repeat that in one group, there's a maximum of 25 students. So yung 25 students na yan, pwedeng mag-vary yung kanyang full refresher, moderate refresher, light refresher population into pwedeng 5, 10, 10, pwedeng ganyan, pwedeng 15, 5, 5, something like that. So, depende kung ano yung magiging grouping, no? Pero basically, isang teacher lang yung hahawak doon sa lahat ng bata na yon. Again, maximum of 25, depending on the number of kids per group that would be identified. Okay? So, class 1, class 2, class 3. Isang teacher lang. And 1 grade level. Okay? So, dun sa model po na ito, model 1, okay, and 3, where one teacher handles a class with different reading profiles, okay, ito daw ay may utilize natin greatly by schools with multiple reading profiles in a class and with a multi-grade categorization. Okay. Ano yung content nito? Basically, kung makikita nyo, ito yung suggested time. All right. 15 minutes is given to each component, which would make 60 minutes. Bakit 60 minutes lang yan? Sabi 90 minutes. Kasi nga, yung initial or opening part would be allotted for the circle time, which is a literature-based lesson na gagamitin nating springboard or scaffold para doon sa 20 minutes na pag-discuss ng ating target skills from the target domains. Okay? Like I said, mamaya papakita ko sa inyo yung visual representation para hindi kayo maguluhan. Mukha lang siyang complicated kasi table form siya. Pero basically, ang sinasabi lang dito, kung si teacher A ay nasa kanya yung full refresher doing oral language activity, nag-worksheet 1 yung kanyang moderate refresher at yung kanyang light refresher. Okay? Kapag nakapagbigay na si teacher ng worksheet 1 and 2 doon sa kanyang full refresher, then the other 2 groups would also have their turn in having an oral activity. Okay? Mamaya makikita nyo yung targets para doon sa oral activity. Ano bang gagawin ni teacher sa oral activity? Sa fun activity. Ano ba yung fun activity na yan? Ayan. Okay, so ito yung 30-minute breakdown. Okay? Remember, there are 90 minutes. So, ginawan ko siya ng visual representation kasi minsan tayo mga teachers, diba, we want to see how it's going to happen in the actual implementation. Gusto na natin makita, paano ko ito gagawin? Paano pagkakasyahin yung 90 minutes na yan? Okay. So, yung 30 minutes, yung 10 minutes nun would be allotted to a lit-based instruction from a story, a song, or a rhyme. And this is the part where the integration of oral language development, vocab, and comprehension would happen. Teacher, 10 minutes lang talaga. Ang iksi naman yan. Hindi natin kailangan ng mahabang story. Yung story, dahil gagamitin lang natin siya as springboard. Hindi siya kailangan mahabang story, but at the same time, it should be good enough to serve as your springboard for the presentation of your target domain. Okay? So, saan daw kukunin to? Nung nagkaroon tayo ng conference, sinabi na meron na kayong primer or primer, depends on how you pronounce that, right? Kung saan meron na kayong mga mother tongue materials na available. We want to maximize the materials that are already present in your bank of materials because ayaw natin na dumagdag pa sa paggawa ng story. Ngayon, if there would be an issue with like a specific letter that you cannot really put out from an existing story that you have, yun lang siguro yung pagkakataon na gagawa tayo ng maiksing kwento na magiging nating starter for our target domain. Hindi naman po ito imposibleng magawa kasi during the conference that we had prior to this, nakagawa po yung mga teachers on the spot ng short story or dialogue. Again, we should not be limited to stories. It can be songs, it can be rhymes, it can be a game, it can be a dialogue where oral language, vocabulary, and comprehension can be tapped, diba? When you ask questions to motivate the students, definitely you're developing their oral language. And then normally in the story, they would encounter vocabulary words that would be discussed. So that would be part of their word bank. And as you ask them to note details from what you have read or what you have sung or what you have played, then comprehension would definitely be would be addressed. And then the 20 minutes of that 30 minutes would be allotted in the presentation of the target letter or the phonological awareness topic. Halimbawa, ang target letter nyo in the mother tongue is letter M, right? So the story has to have a word, at least a word that starts with the letter M, which can be used as a springboard for the introduction of the letter. Teacher Daisy, if you said that teacher A will handle full refresher, moderate refresher, and the mild refresher, then why do I need to introduce the target letter to the almost grade level ready student? Okay, that would just serve as a review for them. Because in the worksheets that you will provide for them, definitely mahirap na yung kanilang kailangan gawin na task related to the letter, to the target letter. That can actually include already words, kung kaya na nila magbasa ng words. Unlike with the ones that you will handle for as full refreshers in the oral language activity. So hindi naman ibig sabihin na magaling na sila, hindi nila pwedeng daanan yung ano ba yung lesson for the day. So for example, if it is about identifying words that rhyme, diba? It is just but right for them to be introduced or reintroduced to what does it mean when you say that words rhyme. So parang introduction lang naman yun, mangyayari dun sa 20 minutes. Kasi yung pagpapalalim noong target domain for the full refresher will happen in their oral activity. So hindi ito magiging boring para doon sa mild refresher at doon sa ating moderate refresher. Kasi this will serve also as a review or an introduction of the worksheets that they will encounter in their individual work. Okay? So, sinasagot ko lang yung mga tanong po na possible yun na maiisip, no? Bakit sila magkakaroon ng similar na intro activity, magkakaiba nga sila ng level? That is because, despite doing differentiated instruction, the topic remains the same for all of them. So it is but right for them to be reintroduced or to be reviewed on the specific target that they will have. Okay. Now, this is how the 60-minute breakdown looks like. Okay? So for the full refresher, kung makikita nyo, ang una nilang gagawin ay oral activity. The point of this is to enrich the concept or enrich the concept introduced for the session. Meaning, kung kanina in-introduce lang yung letter and then dun sa unang part at nagpakilala lang si teacher ng mga picture matching, 'di ba, ng target words and their names and the sound of the letter, dito natin matututukan yung mga full refresher na hindi pa rin nakukuha yung tunog ng letter at hindi kayang isulat yung letter. Okay? Bakit dito natin nilagyan sa oral activity nila? This is for them to not feel intimidated with the abilities of the moderate refresher and the slight refresher. Kasi kapag doon natin ginawa yung lahat, yung nitty-gritty ng presentation ng letter, name, sound, and form sa primer or sa 20 minutes bago itong 60 minutes, mafe-feel nila na nako, the other groups the other groups know that we are lagging so much because we're still studying how the letter is made, right? But then it will bore also. Mabobore naman yung moderate at yung slight kapag lahat ng very tiny details ay gagawin sa presentation. So that would be specific only to the full refresher. Okay? And then, after that, meron silang worksheet 1, worksheet 2. Okay? For all of the groups, ang worksheet 1 would be for the target alphabet knowledge. And then the worksheet 2 would be for the target phonological awareness skill. Now, A while ago, it was mentioned, Teacher Daisy, na may maximum kami na 5 worksheets. Pero bakit 2 lang yung worksheet na pinibigay mo sa amin? Kasi, again, yun yung maximum. I feel like the full refreshers would need more worksheets because they need to practice the target skills that are intended for the session day, right? So, kung pwede yung dagdagan yan, yung worksheet ng full refresher, because they can have a specific worksheet just for writing so that they can master the letter form. And then they can have a worksheet that's just intended for them to match the initial sound to the picture. Because in the succeeding days, may review na yan ng previous letter, right, na na-target. So, pwede talaga dumami yung worksheets depending on how receptive your students are with the instruction. So, binigyan kayo ng leeway na pwedeng umabot ng hanggang 5 worksheets kasi hindi natin nililimitahan yung kagustuhan natin na magkaroon ng mastery for the target skill. Okay, pero yung idea lang ay 2. Okay? But again, you can extend depending on the need. Dahil dito sa pag-implement nito ay malaki ang binibigay na part talaga dun sa implementer, sa teacher na gagawa. Kasi siya ang nakaka-gauge, ay kulang pa yung activity, ay masyadong mabilis na tapos, right? So probably session 1 would be like a diagnostic, the session 1 and 2, like a diagnostic on how many worksheets should really be included based on your initial observation. Now, the fun activity, not just any random activity. This has to be an activity related to the topic or the letter. But the goal of this fun activity is for visual perception skills, meaning it can be hidden pictures, it can be a puzzle, it can be a maze, which would enhance the following directions activity and the eye-hand coordination among the students, diba? If you notice, ang dami-dami nating problems with students who are having a hard time following even one-step instruction. So dito siya papasok sa fun activity. Okay. So in the second column, as you can see, while the full refresher group is having an oral activity, nag-worksheet 1 at worksheet 2 ang ating moderate refresher. Dahil sa third phase pa, doon pa siya magkakaroon ng game. If you notice, yung oral activity ng moderate refresher at nung slight refresher ay game, right? To gauge the understanding of the target topics. Hindi siya enriching the concept introduced for the session. Kasi may assumption tayo na somewhat konting-konti na lang yung polishing na kailangan nitong 2 group or review na lang sila ng concept kaya pwede nang in a game form. Okay. Teacher, hindi ba unfair naman sa full refresher kasi hindi sila magi-game? Again, ang gauge mo dyan, most likely, doon sa day 2, dahil meron na silang alam na letter na na-cover, pwede rin silang magkaroon ng inclusion ng game. Anyway, 15 minutes naman yung allotted for that. So, a simple game would do. Right? So again, meron siyang fun activity as well. For the slight refresher, as you can see, habang nag-worksheet 1, si moderate refresher, nag-worksheet 1 din siya. And then the teacher would call on the group to do the oral activity, which is also in a game form to gauge the understanding of the target topics. Tapos the child would proceed to worksheet 2 and fun activity. Teacher Daisy, when will the giving of the instructions for the worksheets happen? This should happen prior to dispersal. Ibig sabihin, bago sila bitawan para gawin yung kanilang independent activity, ay na-explain na ni teacher yung content ng worksheet 1 and worksheet 2. In the original design, sinabi ko na dapat sabihin na ni teacher yung instruction dun sa activity ng pati na ng full refresher. But thinking about how it's going to be executed, siguro you can just give the instructions for the worksheet 1 and 2 of the moderate refresher and the slight refresher, because you would have naman the time, the initial oral activity with the full refresher. So you can actually give the instructions for their worksheets after their oral activity. Okay, so marami naman yung time na ibibigay habang nandito sila So, pwedeng ibigay yung instructions sa gagawin nila sa worksheet 1 and 2 after their oral activity. This is because full refresher nga ito. So, I think mas maraming effort, no, yung kailangan ni teacher na gawin para ipaliwanag yung worksheet 1 at worksheet 2. Unlike with the moderate and the slight, they are just honing some of the skills that they missed. So, most likely their understanding on what they need to do is higher than the full refresher. So, pwede na itong gawin before dispersal. Doon binibigay yung instructions ng worksheet 1 at worksheet 2. Bakit ba ganon? Ba't kailangan ganon, teacher? This is because the ideal is while the teacher is doing an oral activity, hindi siya pwedeng istorbohin ng members from other groups. Why? Because the oral activity is a very crucial element in the implementation. Dito mo tina-target yung skills na kailangan nilang i-enrich. Dito mo rin gine-gauge kung naiintindihan ba nung certain group yung topic na tina-target. So, hindi ka dapat maiistorbo. During the conference, syempre may mga questions na lumabas like, wouldn't it be offensive if you disregard the question of the students while you're doing the oral activity? I think it wouldn't be offensive because part of the success of the learning camp implementation is to develop the classroom management skills, right, of the teacher also. Meaning, the kids are very receptive to whatever the teacher models. So kung makakasanayan naman nila at ipapaliwanag explicitly ni teacher sa kanila kung bakit hindi sila pwedeng magtanong kay teacher during the implementation of the oral activity, then the students would definitely understand and follow. This is because the oral activity for each target group is sacred. Para sa kanila lang yung oras na yon. So hindi dapat sila tinatanong. So probably when the students are already doing the fun activity, pwede na silang magtanong kung meron talaga silang tanong kay teacher dun sa previous worksheets. Now, a leader can also be assigned per session, per group, so that they would have leadership skills. And number 2, so that the worksheets would be collected properly. In-implement ko po ito no, ng 7 taon sa aking pagtuturo bilang classroom teacher. So I can tell you that though this may appear to be very challenging, this is workable. Pwedeng-pwede siya talagang gawin, lalo na kung 25 kids lang naman yung hawak mo sa isang class. All right. So, yan. Ito po yung flow no, nung ating tinatawag na differentiated instruction kung ang hahawak nitong mga levels na to ay isang teacher lang with 25 students. Per level po ito ha. So, grade 1, isang teacher, 3 learning profiles. Grade 2, isang teacher, 3 learning profiles. Grade 3, ganun din. Okay. Now, yung organization 2, okay? Ayan. Anong nangyari dito? Yung grade 1 and grade 2 teacher and grade 3 teacher ay meron silang hawak na lahat ng profiles, pero 3 yung teacher. Okay? So, parang sa grade 1, si Teacher A, ang hahawakan lang niya full refresher. Si Teacher B, si moderate refresher. At si Teacher C, light refresher. Okay. Paano to nangyayari? Kung marami kayong teachers, right? Pwede nyo talagang hatiin yung mga bata according to their profiles per teacher. Okay? Mag-iiba ba yung design ng implementation? Hindi. Magiging mas direct lang yung teacher kasi isang group lang yung hawak niya. Pero yung pagdadaanan niya na process, it's the same process. Okay? So, ganun pa rin. 90 minutes, right? 15 minutes for the oral activity, 15 minutes for the worksheet 1, worksheet 2, and the fun activity. So, 60 minutes. Nasaan yung 30 minutes? Nandun pa rin sa presentation ng lesson, the lit-based lesson, and the introduction of the target domain for the day. Okay? Mas ideal talaga tong model 2 kasi isa lang yung hawak mo. However, like I said, meron tayong provisions for the school profiles that we have gathered based on the conference. Kasi iba-iba tayo ng itsura ng paaralan, ano? Kaya meron tayong mga ginawang models. All right. Doon sa organization 3, ito yung parang vertical class. Sabi kasi doon sa conference, meron daw mga lugar na isa lang yung teacher kasi maliit lang yung school population, tapos nasa island siya, ganyan. So, ibig sabihin, hahawakan ni teacher yung grades 1, 2, and 3, full refresher, moderate refresher, and light refresher. Isang teacher lang, vertical class. Okay. Ang assumption dito is maliit nga talaga yung population at yun ay talaga yung kanilang school profile, meaning sanay na sila na naka-vertical class. Even the kids are also not sensitive to being grouped with student from another level dahil yun na talaga yung nakagista nila from the beginning of time, right? So, ibig sabihin, isa lang yung mag-i-implement, pero multi-grade yung kanyang hahawakan na nakakategorize pa rin based on the profile. Now, the materials that the teacher will use will remain true to the materials that are intended to be used for a particular group. Okay? So, kung ano yung materials na nire-ready natin for the full refreshers, yun din ang gagamitin nila doon sa kanilang multi-grade classroom. Okay. Siguro ang magiging challenge lang nito ay kung 25 kids nga siya na multi-grade, pero magfo-fall pa sila doon sa subcategories, 'di ba? However, dahil nakita nga natin na doon sa ginawang profiling, pare-parehas lang naman na magkakasama kahit na varied yung reading levels. Kasi ang naging basis ng categorization natin ay yung kanilang skills. Okay? So, hindi nagmamatter yung grade level. Ang nagmamatter ay kung ano yung kakayahan ng bata based on the CRLA result. So, ang i-implement sa kanya na material, regardless kung grade 3 na siya, pero full refresher siya, ay yung material din na gagamitin nyo doon sa full refresher ng grade 1 at moderate refresher ng grade 1 and full refresher ng grade 2. Okay? Ayan. So, in summary, ito yung naging itsura. Yes. Okay. In summary, ganito yung naging itsura nung time allotment, no? So the 30 minutes would be introduction, and the 60 minutes is subdivided with the group activities and the fun activity. So, yung introduction, nandun yung story, song, game, dialogue, poem na gagamitin ni teacher. Tapos yung 20 minutes would be the actual presentation of the target lesson for the domains that need to be tapped depending on the profile of the identified profiles of the students. And then the 60 minutes would be allotted for the oral activity and the worksheets that would further enrich their knowledge on the target topics, and the fun activity where they would be trained to follow directions and also to include multisensorial activities, 'di ba? Para hindi naman puro pen and paper yung ating activity. So pwede sila diyan puzzle, pwede rin silang mag-integrate with mag-interact rather with other group members using an activity, say an art integration based on the text used. So diyan lalabas yung creativity, no, ng mga teachers kung ano ba yung pwedeng ibigay na fun activity. Tapos double purpose 'yan kasi it would also keep them quiet while the others are working either on their specific worksheets or while they are with teacher doing the oral activity. So kaya siya dinesign na ganyan para talagang mahasa yung kanilang skills doon sa tina-target sa kanila na domain, and at the same time magkaroon sa ma-manage nila, 'di ba, yung kanilang independent activities also, and the interaction that they can have while they are playing the games with the teacher during the oral activity and executing the tasks for their fun activity. Yan.